Stacker here trying to get my camera reversed. There we go. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you're doing well. So the petrodollar system is on borrowed time, folks, and it's not looking good. And we've got some news developments that they're breaking today, which lead me to believe that any attempts to save this system, which was set up by Richard Nixon back in 1974 between himself and the Saudi monarchy, any attempts to save it are going to be incredibly difficult when you examine some of the stories that are breaking today. And there are some indications that the Saudis are already looking for new partners apart from the US. So we'll get into that in today's video. We'll get into these breaking stories, and you won't want to miss this one because really these developments could not come at a worse time for the US dollar. Today's leading story: Saudi border guards have killed hundreds of Ethiopian migrants. This, according to Human Rights Watch. And according to this report, the Saudis have been essentially massacring these unarmed migrants attempting to cross their border from Yemen, most of them fleeing from Ethiopia. I think the estimates are north of perhaps 700 migrants have been killed in this manner by Saudi Arabian border guards. And we're going to talk about why this really is just going to make the ongoing attempts by the Biden administration very, very difficult. The attempts to save the petrodollar and why it is likely on its way out and what that's going to mean for the dollar. And also for precious metals, because one of the ways that I am positioning myself for the potential demise of this petrodollar system, this underpinning of the dollar status as the world's sole reserve currency, is by acquiring real money, hard assets. Not the fiat kind, not the kind you can print, but real money, gold and silver, the kind that have been money for thousands of years. If you want to get your hands on some gold and silver, make sure you check out today's video sponsor, sdbullion.com. There's a link down in the description. And right now, they've got a nice deal with these 2023 1-ounce Sword of Truth silver coins. You can get your first coin at spot. So yes, you'll have to pay shipping if you're just getting one coin, but you can add this on to any other bullion you might pick up, and you get the first coin at spot. And other than that, $239 over spot, not bad for additional coins. So make sure you check them out with the link. All right, so let's talk about this news. This news of the Saudis committing human rights violations, committing atrocities, essentially. I mean, according to these reports that I've read, they were responsible for shooting and using explosives on these unarmed migrants. Definitely going to make the attempts by the Biden administration very difficult. These attempts that were reported in the Wall Street Journal back on August 9th, how the Saudis and the U.S. and Israel are working on this plan to normalize Middle East relations. Well, a big part of that is that the U.S. will be giving them new weapons, giving them security guarantees, giving them access to a civilian nuclear program. And in exchange, they have to keep the petrodollar in line. They've got to keep accepting dollars for their oil sales. I've got Cult Leader in the chat here saying, I've been hearing this for 10 years. Can it happen already? Well, I mean, this is a situation which has been evolving for some time now. I mean, again, this system was established back in 1974, shortly after the Bretton Woods system and gold convertibility of the dollar was ended. It's really been a bulwark of the dollar's status around the world. It's part of the reason everybody holds dollars is because you need dollars to buy oil. But there's been a lot of speculation about the end of this. Certainly, we have been hearing a lot about this lately, but this development today, I think, really shines a light on why this deal is a bit of a Hail Mary. And it is going to be extremely difficult to galvanize the political will to realign ourselves with the Saudis and give them these military concessions when you've got stories like this breaking that they are committing human rights violations and slaughtering unarmed migrants on their border. It's going to be very difficult to get U.S. politicians and the U.S. public on board when you have stories like this breaking. And it's going to be difficult to, propose arming the Saudis in addition. I've got someone in the chat here saying we're pretty picky with who we talk about violating human rights, atrocities and that sort of thing with. And yeah, I would say that we're somewhat selective in, who we criticize for that. Certainly we've got some blood on our own hands. There's been decades of war in the Middle East, and we have been a big part of that, but we certainly have not been intentionally slaughtering migrants crossing our border, as is reported here. I mean, if you read the reports from Human Rights Watch, they are pretty disturbing. And I'm not going to get too into that story. You can look it up yourself, but that is going to be making the rounds. And this means that getting this deal put together is going to be that much more difficult for the Biden administration. It was already kind of a Hail Mary. Also, this week, we're here at the BRICS conference starting tomorrow. Xi Jinping left for South Africa today, I believe, and China is looking to expand the BRICS bloc. This is something we've been hearing about for some time now, been reporting about it quite a bit on this channel, but it's here, folks. This week is the BRICS summit, and it's very possible that we may see Saudi Arabia inducted into the BRICS organization this week. At the same time that these news stories are breaking that are going to make any attempts to salvage the petrodollar system incredibly difficult. There was another story that broke today from Business Insider, and this is regarding the Saudi military alliances around the world where they're putting their resources, and there is a first of its kind fighter jet purchase conducted by the Saudi Arabians here. They have bought some French jets, these Rafale jets. Pictured are some F-15s, which is currently what makes up a large portion of the Saudi Air Force, things they've purchased from the U.S. But according to this report, they are now looking to other countries to get their military hardware from, getting it from France. And France is a lot more ambivalent about human rights violations, it would seem. And so the Saudis seem to kind of understand that their future with the U.S. may be in jeopardy. The U.S. may not be as reliable a strategic partner as it has been for the past several decades moving forward. Part of that has to do with the changing geopolitical alliances around the world. The U.S. doesn't really buy very much oil from Saudi Arabia anymore. Our imports from Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf have plummeted over recent years, over the past decade or so. And now China is the biggest purchaser of Saudi oil. So the fact that they are no longer purchasing U.S. F-15s and they're looking to French aircraft. Now, I've got someone in the chat here saying Saudi buying Typhoons instead of F-22-35. Yeah, the Saudis actually are no longer buying Typhoon jets either because Germany, I believe, has canceled the sales. Yeah. In July, Germany announced it would not allow additional Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jets to be delivered to Saudi Arabia. So they'd been purchasing these Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jets. Now, I'm not a military guy, I don't know too much about the hardware itself. However, it is a sign here now that the Saudis are looking to the French. Now, they might have looked to the Russians or the Chinese, but they do fear the imposition of U.S. sanctions should they do a deal like that, according to this report from Business Insider. And that's probably a valid concern because the Saudis are trying to kind of walk a fine line here, it seems. They want to kind of have their cake and eat it too. They want to maintain their strategic partnership with the U.S., but also have increased dealing with Russia and China. At least that's been the story out of Arabia so far. But we may be nearing an inflection point where they really decide to dump their relationship with the U.S. I mean, they did see the U.S. withdraw from Afghanistan in a fairly disastrous manner in fairly recent times, and that couldn't have instilled too much confidence. They perceive the U.S. can project power in the Middle East, Afghanistan, right around the and now they appear to diversify where they can get arms from, and that is a huge part of the petrodollar system. That is one of the things that Nixon essentially guaranteed to the Saudis back in '74, is that they would have access to U.S. weapons like the F-15, which they, makes up a big portion of their Air Force. Also, you got to keep in mind that there have been breadcrumbs being for some time, as put in the chat earlier, hearing about this for 10 years, and we have been on this path for some time now. I mean, the writing has been on the wall. It's just that now it seems to be reaching kind of a fever pitch, and that's exemplified by the fact that the Biden administration has dangled the carrot of a nuclear program and ironclad military security guarantees and further advanced military hardware, despite the fact that this is going to be popular or unpopular here at home because of things like, the slaughter of innocent migrants on the Saudi borders. That doesn't look good. And, partners like China, they'd be more than willing to turn a blind eye to that kind of behavior, much more so than the U.S. And so all of this is very ominous for the petrodollar. Of course, when the petrodollar ends, should we see China and Saudi Arabia begin to denominate their oil transactions in yuan or something like that, that is going to be a very bad day for the dollar when that officially occurs. And we know, like I said, there have been these breadcrumbs. The Saudi Aramco CEO told us a couple years ago that prioritizing the energy supply of China would be what Aramco would be doing for the next 50 years. They said it would be their highest priority to meet the energy needs of China. Again, China, the largest buyer of Saudi oil. Here's another one. The UAE, they sold some gas for yuan earlier this year, right? That is something we reported on here. This is kind of a big deal because you got gas being settled in the Chinese currency. Then more recently, we had India purchasing oil from the United Arab Emirates in Indian rupees. So that marked the first oil sale denominated in a non-dollar currency. And I really don't think it's going to be very long before we get another headline like that Saudi Arabia has sold oil for something other than dollars. I mean, I don't know exactly what it'll be. Maybe it'll be Chinese yuan. That certainly seems, we'll see. It could be something else, though. It could be maybe rupees. Who knows? India certainly buys some oil from Saudi Arabia, so they're looking to push the digital rupee for international trade. That could well be the case. But Saudi Arabian finance minister, he told us back in Davos in January, told Bloomberg that the Saudis were willing to talk about accepting non-dollar currencies for oil. So the fact now that they are committing these human rights atrocities and also looking to diversify their arms suppliers, I think is really a bad sign for the petrodollar moving forward. Now, I did put out a poll regarding this BRICS 2023 summit, which is going to kick off tomorrow and should be wrapping up on the 24th. So, we won't have to wait long to see what outcome there will be from this BRICS conference. Certainly, if there's any petrodollar news, I will try to bring it to you in a very timely manner. But it was interesting to see what all of you thought about this BRICS 2023 summit. So the question I asked was, what will be the most significant outcome or development to come out of the BRICS 2023 summit next week? And the choices here: new BRICS currency, BRICS expansion, a weakened petrodollar, a big nothing burger, because as we heard earlier in the chat, we have been hearing a lot about this for some time. So there's always the possibility that, this in and of itself may not be, any huge major development. And then other, and very interesting that about 26% of the respondees or respondents, I guess you call them, all 1,200 of them, said to be a big nothing burger. However, about 3/4 of you did seem to think that there would be some kind of major development, about evenly split between those things. And the reason I made BRICS expansion and a weakened petrodollar separate things there is that certainly if we do get BRICS expansion, that could be a bad sign for the petrodollar and the U.S. dollar status as the world reserve currency. But even if we don't see Saudi Arabia join BRICS, there's still going to be a push among the global south, among the BRICS nations, whatever you want to call them, to rely less on the U.S. dollar and to make more moves like denominating oil sales in currencies like the Indian rupee, the local BRICS currencies. That is a stated goal. And, the whole BRICS currency thing, time will tell. I guess we'll know soon whether or not they're going to be laying the foundation of some new BRICS currency, maybe backed by gold, maybe a basket of currencies. I don't know. There's been endless speculation about that. But the good news is we won't have to wait long to see, because the conference is going to be in just a couple of days. But, it's looked bad leading up to the BRICS 2023 summit for the petrodollar. We've certainly covered it extensively here. It's looked like the writing is on the wall and like its days are numbered for some time. But this breaking news regarding these new Human Rights Watch atrocities on the part of the Saudis, that is really going to make selling this new deal that the Biden administration is pushing out there to attempt to save the petrodollar much, much more difficult to put together. I mean, I would almost say that this means that that deal will likely be dead on arrival, especially as we see the this story play out and we hear more and more about this. But again, is pretty bad stuff. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of support among the American people. I don't think that the Saudis are already, terribly popular among the U.S., but they do have oil, and it is very important for the global economy and how the dollar system works to have them on board. And so, if we lose them to new partners, if they join the BRICS, or if they decide to team up with China and eliminate dollar price sanctions, will do the same thing, and that's going to be a bad day because all those dollars that are around the world right now, everybody's holding them because they need them to buy oil. They don't need them to buy oil anymore. Well, they're probably just not going to want to hold those anymore. And this also means that U.S. Treasuries, there's going to be less demand for them around the world, and that's going to push interest rates up at a time when the U.S. economy is already on the verge of collapse. If you ask me, despite all of the good news that we keep hearing out of the mainstream financial media, I think anybody out there going shopping at the store and getting paid in devalued currency understands the pressures that are present in this economy. And so that's why I'm stacking. Anybody have anything you want to comment on before we wrap this? This is a little bit of a shorter live stream, but I just thought it was important to comment on those breaking stories today because I really think that that spells the death knell for this attempt to save the petrodollar. Let's see. You got the Himalayan Yeti says U.S. asked for its own demise. Too much freedom is not good. I don't know about that. I think freedom is typically the default path that we should be on. Too much freedom, I don't necessarily know that I would agree with that. Is my internet slow or are you stuttering? Mark Gutierrez. I could be stuttering. Yeah. Sorry about that, Mark. I do stutter sometimes, especially when I get fired up about petrodollar and economics. I'm not a professional public speaker, despite what you may have heard. Okay, I have to ask: is Trump going to be Okay, yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up today. Yeah, Trump did recently say, I covered that in a video, that we needed to enhance domestic energy production, and I know that's something I frequently hear from a lot of people. I mean, I don't want to comment too much on Trump. That was certainly a controversial video. I heard about it from everybody on every side of the aisle. Not too much good stuff. But he said that the cure for losing the dollar status as the world reserve currency was to increase domestic oil production. And I really don't think that's going to be an effective strategy. I mean, it might help reduce inflation here in the U.S., or price inflation, rather, not really the true definition of inflation, which is expansion of the money supply, but the new kind of in vogue definition of just higher prices. It could help bring prices down, certainly, because energy is critical for every aspect of the economy. But when it comes to the petrodollar is not really about what the U.S. does. It's about how OPEC denominates its sales, and they're selling to non-U.S. countries. They're selling to China. So the thing here is, why does China need to go out and procure dollars to then buy oil from Saudi Arabia when China is Saudi Arabia's biggest trading partner? See, the Chinese could just pay yuan for oil, and then all the manufactured stuff that Saudi Arabia imports from China, they could use those yuan to pay for that. So increasing domestic U.S. oil production, while it's not necessarily a bad thing, I don't think that that is going to resolve this issue, which is a much bigger issue than just high energy prices. Losing the petrodollar status and the world reserve currency status of the U.S. dollar, it will lead to higher energy prices, certainly, but that's going to be because the dollar is losing its purchasing power. So that's it for today. I got low blood pressure saying, Smart Silver Stacker, first live stream, made it. Well, welcome, sir. Thank you all very much for joining. I'm sorry if there is lag in the stream today, folks. I think I'm on my mobile data at the moment, so I apologize for that. I'll try to